Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Fell into Food Podcast, the weekly harvest. We got a little different setup today, and I'm really excited because I'm actually in the IDM Content Kitchen. And with me, as always, Frank Perry, Chief Procurement Officer at GetFresh. How are we doing today, Frank?
We're doing great, bud. And yourself?
Oh,
Good.
I couldn't be better, especially being in the kitchen studio.
I was just gonna say it's good to see you in your element right there. So it's nice.
Absolutely. So not just behind the computer. So today's going to be a lot of fun. Frank actually had some folks reach out to him on today's segment. So Frank, tell the folks what we're going to be doing today, and then we'll jump right into it.
Yeah. So let me start off by thanking the two guests that have they watch and listen to our episodes. Lindsay Hurley, he had a great question about how to pick the right watermelon, and Melissa Nillis had a great question on how do you cut pineapple. So between those two ladies, they also gave me some, the other questions as to not just how to cut watermelon, but it's also like there's other things too, though. So like pomegranates and stuff. So it was kind of neat though to have that kind of feedback. So I wanted to thank them for this segment and how to go from there. So um, you have the watermelon kind of placed out right front. So maybe we start with that piece. So what I'll do
Yes.
is I'll first start off with what are you looking for? Um, or here, how about this? How are you cutting it first?
Yeah.
While
Sure.
you cut it, I'll go ahead and start explaining some characteristics or best times to do it. So show the listeners how it is that you would go ahead and cut then a watermelon.
Perfect. So yeah, so for our watermelon, what we're going to do is we're going to take tops and bottoms off, and then what we're going to do is actually curve around the watermelon and take the rind off because it is incredibly important from cutting purposes to have that done. Now, predisposition. Not everything I'm doing today is the perfect way or the exact way. These are just the ways that I learned or the most efficient ways that I do these things. So by all means, this is not the end all be all. Additionally, a good safety reference is all the produce is washed. I know we're going to talk about that with cantaloupe especially, but all this produce has been washed because you want to make sure that you have clean produce when you're cutting, as you're cutting through skins and going in. You don't want any bacteria into your product. So with that said, as Frank's talking, like he said, I'm going to cut some stuff so you'll be able to see that while he's talking. So Frank, let's tell everyone, what the heck do you look for? I've heard so many different things of you got to knock out a watermelon and listen to it, to the end of it. Is it big? Is it small? And then when is the best time of the year to buy?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll get into that in a second while you're cutting that. But you're absolutely right, though, Chef. I kind of cut most of my big melons, fruits, and stuff like that the way you're cutting it. Now, to your point, now when I have, like my daughter and their friends over, the kids like to be able to hold the rind. So you're right. There are different ways to do it, but if you're just trying to get the actual flesh as the eating source, that's the right way to do it, and that's the way that I was always taught to from a young age. So, um, but yeah, to ask your answer your question about when is the best time of the year to buy watermelon, the peak season for that is going to be between July and August, with July really being probably the peak month to go ahead and get that. Now, mind you, watermelon is basically a 12-month of the year program. It is something that is grown offshore and then it's grown back domestically. So, but when it comes to the actual peak season, July and August is the best time frame, with July really being that peak month. Okay. Um, Now, when you go to a grocery store and you're going to pick out a watermelon, what are you looking for? So there is a lot of different characteristics that you can go ahead and look for when it comes to picking out a ripe watermelon. So the first thing you want to kind of look for is really its shape. You want something that's going to be more of a round versus an oblong. Um, a round one is going to go ahead and give you that first initial characteristic of what you want to look for. The other major thing you want to really keep your eyes on is going to be the color of the skin. You do want something that is going to be dark and dull looking, not so shiny. So
Okay.
you're going to want, and when you look at a watermelon, there's going to be all these different lines on it. You want the initial lines to be a dark green, with the lines in between to be more of like a lighter shade of green. So you don't want it to be kind of a yellowing color. You do want it to have a darker color look to it. Okay. The other real caveat is looking at what we call the belly of it. And what the belly is really how it rests on the field. If you're looking more for a what we call it as a yellow belly versus
Mhm.
any kind of a white spot. So a yellow belly is going to show that it's been on the ground and on its stem ripening right there on the fields. that's really a very key component um, to that. Then the other really kind of piece that you really look at is at the stem part of it.
Hmm.
There's this thing called the webbing. It's a webbing that will kind of spiral off of each section of the middle of that the stem part. You're going to want something that has lots of webbing, not something
Okay.
that doesn't have any at all. So again, you could also do the tapping test where you pat it, and if you pat it and it sounds hollow, that's something you want to probably skip away from. But if
Okay.
it's got a dense sound to it, it's going to be a good watermelon on the inside. So again, I think the main characteristics you want to really look for is it being dark skin and dull looking. You want it to be nice and round. You want to have yellow belly on the bottom of it, and then you want to also look for lots of webbing. And you actually have me pretty hungry right now. I could actually go for some watermelon myself
I
now.
mean, I mean, I should probably try it, right? For being out of season, this is a pretty good watermelon. I'm not gonna lie,
Yeah,
because when it's out of season, sometimes you don't get that super juicy flavor, that deep, like you said, that coloration. And talk
yeah.
maybe a little bit while I just finish this up. I notice a lot of times, what is the phenomenon, or what is it when you cut one open, and this one's not bad at all, where it almost there's a tiny little bit of section here that you can see, but you can see how it almost is like grainy. You get a watermelon, you cut it open, there's nothing worse than all of a sudden
Like
it's
a
super grainy, and
Yeah, it's
then
like a
it
a
just
mealy taste to it. Yeah,
yes. What is that, and why does that happen?
I just think that that means it's probably been over ripened at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, again, that's the hardest part about picking really any kind of fruit that you can't really see the inside. It really is a crapshoot.
Hmm.
So that's why it's important to kind of look at a lot of these characteristics to see. All right, I'm trying to maybe eliminate the odds of having some kind of like
Hmm.
a mealiness or a hollow heart. You just kind of run through a couple of these different steps to try to find the perfect ripe watermelon in this case. So
Got it.
Um, there are different varieties as well when it comes into the watermelon family, and I will tell you, my daughters are big fans of the black diamond variety. That one is
Okay.
going to have, it won't have lines on it. It's just going to be a flat, dark green color around it. So you're going to still want the same kind of characteristics when it comes to the yellow belly and whatnot. But yeah, the black diamond watermelon is one of my kids' favorites.
What about seedless versus seed in? Does it matter nowadays? I know they've done some modification with genetics and stuff, and I don't think it's as big of an issue, but any last on watermelon, seedless versus seed in?
Now, I mean, I have heard where seed watermelons with seeds actually do have better flavor, but you are
Okay.
taking that component of having to deal with the seeds, especially when you're dealing with kids and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I'm more of the component. I still like a seedless watermelon, and again during the peak seasons, of course.
Yeah, I don't. There's nothing worse than I know as a kid sitting there and spitting out seeds. It's just the pain in the, or you get it and you crunch it. So
Yeah.
let's move on to pineapple. So on
Yes,
this
sir.
guy, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to remove the crown, and you can actually twist that off to make it a little easier. A lot of people just cut right off. You can just remove that crown. And same thing as a watermelon. We're going to top. We're going to take the sides, and we're going to try and remove the eyes. Those are those little brown pieces. We don't want that. Is it just the flavor's not there? And then when we get down to the core, which is around the center, what I like to do, some people will go down the middle and they'll cut around the core. I'm not a big fan of that personally. So I will actually kind of like an apple, I will actually go around the sides. So depending on, again, what application you're doing for, is it catering? Is it just eating it at home? I'll usually just go around the edges and you'll see that as I'm cutting it. And then it's ready to go. So the questions on this one, again, what to look for when buying. You've got green. This one's got some nice yellow around the bottom. And then, when people eat pineapple, what is it that causes that tingly sensation? I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. So maybe talk about those two things as I go through this pineapple.
Yeah. So the again, the first characteristics you want to buy too when you're looking at pineapple is really going to be the overall color of the pineapple. You really want to buy a ripe pineapple at the grocery store more so than trying to sit there and ripen it at your house. So when you do go, the biggest thing you want to look for is the yellow. So if you look at the pineapple, each one of those little dimples, I'll call it, you
Hmm.
want that to be very yellow with the outer sides of it being green. But you want to have more yellow on a pineapple because then it is ripe and ready to go. Like I said, you could go ahead and buy a green one and ripen it at your house, but it does take a little bit longer to be able to do so. If you can get it, your ideal goal is to look for yellowing on the around the dimple area, around the whole pineapple. Um, Another thing that I usually do too is I kind of flip over the bottom of it and look at the bottom and just try to always make sure that there's not any kind of mold down there because that's where it will start to
Hmm.
see the mold because that is right there at the stem where you do harvest it. So um, yeah, and then going back to your question of the tingling sensation, though, so that is kind of a weird phenomenon in the sense of like what causes it. So it really is. There's a professional term behind it. I just call it a pesky enzyme. Really,
It's bromelain. Bromelain.
bromelain.
I
So
don't. I don't know if
bromelain
I'm
is
pronouncing that right or not, but I know the research term, bromelain, something along those lines.
yeah. So what that is, then it like I said, it's a pesky enzyme. So it digests a protein on your tongue that causes that tingling sensation. Um, And the riper you get it, or if you actually, I've had family members that have been to like Costa Rica for vacation,
Hmm.
and it's actually even stronger out there for some reason. So they'll come back sometimes, and they'll just their tongues will just be like tingling up a storm. So yeah, that's a the component of it. Now, well, yeah. So
I
show
just
what
wanted
you
to
did. Like,
show, yeah,
yeah,
I just want to show. So what I've got left is the core here. So, it's hard, it's woody. What's really good though to use this for is like some fruited water. Dump this in, let it sit overnight because there's still going to be a little bit around it. If I push into it, you can see some, but you're never going to get it perfect. But it's great for flavored waters or infusing something, if you're doing some cocktails at home. And then again, I took the two sides off. So I get two kind of nice sides, and then you get two kind of skinnier sides. And then I'm just gonna cut that down. I'm gonna make a little fruit salad here as we get to the other. Maybe touch real quick. There's a really cool pineapple. I think it's from Hawaii, but and if people get a chance to try it, the pink one.
yeah. So pink glow, yeah, it's a new variety. It's kind of again, it really has very similar taste profile to it, but again, the appearance of it is just it's amazing to be able to just cut open a pineapple and have the
Hmm.
pink flesh. So what we see in our world, in the food service world, is a lot of high end chefs and restaurants will go ahead and use that for again for the color appearance on your plates. Um, you do find that at some high end grocery stores, um, but keep in mind, it is pricey. There's no
Yeah.
doubt if you start to spend $8, $9, $10 for just one pineapple. Again, it's the nostalgia of just being such a unique variety.
I mean, I've had it. I think it tastes better, or maybe it was just the variety. It was a specific variety that was grown only in Hawaii. And when I had it, I was blown away. And it was a super expensive pineapple. I think it was
Yeah,
somewhere around like $15-20. It was super
yeah, it's
expensive.
it's pricey, no doubt.
All right, so we're gonna get this board cleaned up here. Again, I like to work clean. I like my space clean. So if you ever see me pulling this little bottle out, that's just some sanitizer, some commercial grade sanitizer that we use in restaurants and whatnot that's safe around food. Next, we're gonna go into cantaloupe. So a couple things. Maybe talk really about the importance of safety. A lot of recalls happen from cantaloupe. So maybe talk about why that is, and then maybe a couple of the differences, right? People are always like, oh, cantaloupe, honeydew, what's the difference? They don't never really know. So maybe touch on those two questions. And so what I'm going to do for this guy, again, we're going to go top, bottom, and then I'm going to cut it in half, and then I need to scoop out the seeds. I didn't bring a spoon with me, but if Brad here in the background, he's gonna grab me one, some sort of spoon, so I can scoop those seeds out. If not, I'll do it with my hands. I'll do it the old school hard way. But that's what we're gonna do to get the cantaloupe down to an edible form. So go ahead and take it away with those questions, Frank.
Yeah, so to your point about the food safety side of it, everything is always important is washing your fruits. So you've already done this prior to this segment. So I mean, always rinse it underneath because exactly to your point, once you start to the blade hits the skin and then the skin and then it
Hmm.
goes and now the blade hits the flesh, you could just carry um any kind of stuff that that will go ahead and just kind of just go right into the flesh. So it's extremely important. No matter what, even when you say I'm not eating the outside, it's because the blade is touching the outside and then touching the flesh. The other characteristics, as you can see, you're cutting a cantaloupe. The color is going to be orange, while a honeydew is going to be more on like a greenish side to it. They both do have their own distinctive flavor to it. Uh, but yeah, the characteristic is going to basically be the color side of it. So you do notice it a little bit from the outside as well too. When you do grab a cantaloupe, you're going to see a little bit of like the orangish color on the actual skin, while even on Um, Honeydew, you're going to see the characteristic of like a green. So what you're going to really want when you are looking at that is going to just make sure that you are finding the brighter color of a honeydew and a cantaloupe. That means that it is, again, it's at a good ripening stage. Uh,
Yeah, and cantaloupe versus honeydew, the skin is different too. From like yeah, one's textured and one is smooth.
Correct, exactly. So yeah, the honeydew is going to have more of a nice smooth texture on the skin, while yes, a cantaloupe is going to have more of like the rigidity edges of it though. And then again, there are different varieties within these. There are different seed varieties, so you'll never really know that at a grocery store. It's hard to actually have growers market. Growers are trying to always be very creative and innovative when it comes to what can they do to make it sweeter, what can they do for appearance wise. So there are different growers that will go ahead and plot different seed varieties just to see how it comes out, how it grows, and how it tastes. And then when it does work out, then it goes to production, and then it ends up on our plates or at a grocery store. So yeah, but again, you'll never
Yeah.
notice that at a grocery store because they don't market it that way. But just know that throughout the calendar year, it may taste a little different, but that is because it is probably a different seed variety from one time you buy it to the next time.
Cool. Moving on to avocados. So again, one of our favorites here in America, at least. I know a lot of people eating them. So what we're gonna do is, we're gonna go around it, right, right around the center, the pit, and then be able to kind of pull that apart. And we'll take our knife and be careful, and we're gonna pull that out. And then I usually use a towel or something to help me so I don't cut myself on my blade because I've done that too many times. And then what I'm going to show is just a scoop where you can scoop it out. And again, depending on what you're doing with it, are you making guacamole? It's going to get all trashed, doesn't matter. But if you're doing something nice and delicate, it's going on a salad, you want it to look nice, or even sushi, we're going to actually peel the outside of it off to show you that you can just peel back and then see that. So on the questions for this guy is really discuss maybe the various stages, because again, you go to the grocery store and some will be a rock. Some of them are, you could almost put your finger through it. Maybe talk about what those stages are on all of those. And then the other question is, why do they brown so quickly? And does that affect the taste?
Yeah, so there are five stages within an avocado. The first one is hard. That's basically right when you pull it off of a tree. Those you'll never really see at a grocery store, even though it is hard. It's the stage of it. No, from hard, then it goes into a preconditioned stage. Preconditioned then goes into breaking. Well, breaking means that it's already starting that process of ripening. Okay, that is where you might start to find that at a grocery store, the breaking stage, so stage three, or it's into stage four, which is a firm ripe. Again, firm would be again, it's kind of you do the test with your fingertips as you touch it. It still is
Mhm.
hard, but maybe you got a little bit of give to it. So it's at a ripening stage, but it's still firm. One of those you can leave on the
Mhm.
counter, maybe like in a couple of days, it will go from a firm ripe to a ripe where you're perfectly ready for whatever application it is you're doing. If it's guacamole, if it's for just a regular eating, put in a salad or something. So yeah, there are the five stages
Right.
of it, but like I said, most of the time you will catch it where it's probably as a firm ripe at a grocery store. Um, just go ahead and leave it, like I said, on your counter, give it a day or a couple of days, and then it will go ahead and ripe and be ready to use. Um, just like with other commodities or other fruits, apples being one of them, once an avocado is exposed to air, it starts to oxidize. That's what causes it to brown. Just like I said, just like
Mhm.
with apples too, you cut open an apple, you let it sit out, it's going to start to brown itself. Does it affect the taste? It really doesn't. It just affects the appearance. Nobody wants a guacamole that has brownness to it. But generally, that brownness is going to be at the top of the layer, anyways, because that's obviously what's exposed to the air. So if
Right.
you just take your spoon and you go ahead and you just swish it around and mix it together, you'll be perfectly fine. You won't even notice the brown, and you should go back to having a nice green guacamole.
Yeah, little acid that helps protect that oxidation. That also goes into apples. I know we're not doing apples today, but same thing. If you're cutting apple slices and you don't want your little kiddos to be like, "Oh, I don't want to eat that; it's brown." Just take a tiny little bit of lime juice, lemon juice, and some water as you cut them. Put them in there, let it soak for just a little bit. Pull them out. they won't turn fast enough for your kiddos to know, especially if you put them in a container. So nice, easy trick
Yeah,
there.
it
So
just and
next
then
we're gonna
one
move
last
on.
thing
Go ahead.
regarding avocados, and this was something that was also brought up to me by one of our listeners, Tracy Robinson. She asked about when you do, because you brought this up on a previous episode, when you throw it into a freezer, do you put it in where it's ripe or do you put it in
Mm,
when it's hard? The answer is put it in when
yeah,
it's
good
ripe. Yes.
question.
So you want it ripe, then you can go ahead and throw it in a freezer.
Perfect. Let's move on to mango. Now, this one's not as ripe, so maybe you can talk a little bit about what we're going to do about as far as picking. There's so many colors. You see red, you see yellow, there's green.
Yeah.
You know, I know there's some varieties of mango, but really what are people normally gonna see? So what I'm gonna do from a cutting perspective is I still like to take the top and the bottom. I like to have a nice surface to work on. Now, again, depending on the application you're doing, I'm either gonna cut around the center seed, because actually a seed inside of this, and that's that hard part, and I can either just take the skin off. So I'm going to take the skin off of half of it and cut it. And then the other half, I'm going to leave the skin on and show you a little trick where you can actually make some hashes within it. Hopefully, I mean, this one may be a little more difficult because it's not quite ripe yet, of how you can hash it and then turn it inside out so you can actually just eat it right off of the flesh. So those are the two ways I'm going to show you that, while Frank kind of goes into more about mango.
Yeah, so what you have in your hand, there are a couple different varieties, and it will have different flavor profiles as well too. So there's the Hayden and there's the Tommy Atkins. They are two different varieties that are of that larger size. What you're looking for, okay. There's also another variety which is a champagne mango, which is a smaller one. That again too also has another different variety. That one's more of a yellow skin, but it's a lot smaller than your typical mango. Um, how to pick it is really it's the field test again. You're kind of again at the grocery store. You're just kind of squeezing it with your fingertips, and if you feel a little bit of a break to it, it's pretty good and ready to go. Again, it's one of those where maybe you take home and you let it sit out for another day or two and really go ahead and give it the squeeze test again. But that's a really
Mhm.
important thing. And again, when it really comes to all the stuff that we're talking about, from pineapples to cantaloupes, mangoes, the smell test is also another thing. Now, I don't know if you want to be sitting in a grocery store, sniffing every single fruit and whatnot. But I mean, if you bring it home and you are, going ahead and ripening it on your counter, you can go ahead and kind of sniff right at the stem. And if you smell it, you will smell kind of like a sweetness to it. So you can do that with majority of the stuff that we are talking about today.
Yeah, and notice with the mango, so I want to show a couple things. I'm going to kind of put it on the camera. You can see as I took one side off, I took the skin off and then I cut it. So now it's ready to go. I can dice it, put it in salsa, whatever I'm going to do with it. And then the other side, I left the skin on. Now you can see as I'm getting right into the actual seed, you can see this little dot, right? That's the start of that seed. That's that hard piece. So you can tell it's almost like, I don't know how to explain, if you are cutting a chicken, you kind of almost have to feel as you're cutting down. If it's
Yeah.
hard, you kind of like give it a little and kind of go a little bit further out, so that way you're not hitting that center. And then you always have the sides. A lot of people may not get the sides, but there's tiny bits of fruit that you can actually get from the sides. And again, every mango is going to vary on how much you're actually going to get. And again, these are great to soak. Again, so if you're cutting a bunch of tropical fruit, put it in water, let it soak. It's got great flavor. So let me just show you real quick, since I've got it there, is my skin on one. I can actually go down with it, and obviously be careful. Don't try and cut through. And this one again is going to be a little more tough because it's not fully ripe, but you don't want to cut yourself. But usually with a pretty ripe one, you can feel right down to the skin. And if you kind of just make hatches, or if you want to put it down, you can. So if you kind of make hatches, and hopefully I did it good enough. It's not super ripe, but you can kind of see how it'll peel itself off, and then you can just eat it. So again, not being as ripe, it's not going to be there. So I'm going to let this actually ripen up even as I cut it for a couple days. But you can peel this back, and then you can just consume it as.
Yeah, the skin is also edible too. Obviously make sure you wash it though, but the skin is also an edible piece and it does offer some nutrients as well.
I don't know. Have you ever eaten this? I've
I,
never had
what I
skin on a
have just
mango.
because I like to just try everything, but it's tough. I'm not gonna lie. I would prefer not to, but I mean, if you make a nice little wedge out of it, there are people that do enjoy eating it that way. I prefer not to. I mean, I always just look at a mango as something that's nice and soft. So adding that texture of a tough
Yeah.
skin is not my cup of tea.
Mine either. All right, so I saved the best for last, and I don't want people. Please don't make fun of me or roast me. Is a pomegranate. I don't cut a lot of these at home because they are just labor intensive, to be completely honest. So they can be a bit of a pain to a degree. But what we're gonna do, you'll see these. You'll see pomegranate juice. You'll just see pomegranate seeds, but not a lot of people break them down. Or you see them in the store and you're like, what? Well, how am I supposed to use this? So they're segmented fruits. So really, what you do is if you do take the top off enough to expose the fruit, and so you may have to make a couple cuts, and this is gonna usually make a mess because these
It's gonna
seeds, if
bleed
you get
everywhere.
into them,
Yeah.
they bleed everywhere. So you kind of got to be a little careful. Otherwise, you're going to have seeds everywhere. But if you look, you can see there's actually like little segments within this pomegranate. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go down those segments and kind of crack it open to expose that, because what we don't want to eat is the white part. And maybe Frank
Yeah,
can tell you a little bit more
the
about
white part
that.
is very bitter. So yeah, I would steer away from eating the white part.
So as I get it cracked open, what I'm going to do is actually, let me get my spoon back, give it a quick clean. A wooden spoon is a great friend for this. You can do it in water. I did get a thing of water. There's a couple ways that you can attempt to get these seeds out. Again, whatever works for you. I am not a pomegranate aficionado, but I will do my best. So Frank, not sure what else you want to talk about with pomegranates, maybe their uniqueness and
Yeah,
in
yeah.
this.
So just a couple little fun facts with them. Pomegranates actually is a self-pollinating plant. Um, they could also be pollinated by insects, but it is kind of unique that this is actually a self-pollinating one. I mean, I'm always used to just, most fruit are going to be pollinated by bees and whatnot, but I mean, yeah, it's kind of unique that this one can self-pollinate. Another good fun fact is that it does contain 3 times more antioxidants than green tea. And for those of you that are red wine drinkers, it also has more antioxidants than a glass of red wine too. So, um, and then just like with avocados, about freezing it, you could also go ahead and take the seeds and freeze them for up to about 12 months. So another little
Huh.
fun thing that you could do with them. I mean, obviously you take it open. It's probably you're not going to eat it all in one sitting. But yeah, you can go ahead and go ahead and freeze it, and then later on use it for future purposes.
So see, if you look here, how that center kind of just fell right apart after I cut through those segments. So this is usually what people have to pick through a lot. There's still more in there, but if you take a look at it, I mean, if you do it right, a lot of that will come out, and the pith, I think that's what it's called, will stay there. So then what you can do is kind of do it over a bowl of water. So each of your segments, that way you can knock the seeds down. And I don't know from my camera angle if you can actually see into the bowl, but if not, I'll do it so you can. But as I pull it apart, all these pieces, I can kind of pull that white off. And then with my spoon, either I can just kind of peel them out, or there's like the little tap method where people will kind of just smack it, and then those seeds will kind of loosen themselves, and then all of the white will kind of float to the top, and you would pull that out. So I'm gonna do some of this. I don't think I'm gonna do the entire thing right now. But Frank, is there anything else on the pomegranate that you want to tell the listeners?
No, not really. I mean, again, pomegranates are just they're really good for you. I mean, some people will shy away from it because it has a seed in it and they can be annoying to eat. But I mean, overall, the health benefits of it are very good. So I mean, it's not something maybe you eat, 12 months out of the year. But again, that's where, pomegranate juice comes into play and other forms of pomegranate, not just the actual fruit itself. So, um,
All right, and as I'm cleaning this, what about the markets this week? How are we looking weather-wise? Markets, anything folks need to know
yeah,
about?
right now, I mean, again, you're dealing with a lot of weather issues and stuff throughout the country. But, for those of you that like hot and spicy peppers, this is a very tough time right now for that. There's a lot of growers out there that are calling act of God just due to weather conditions, and again, the supply just not being there for the demand. Um, we're still in that same boat with grapes again, where things are still not fully up there when it comes to supply. Round tomatoes are still a problem child as well right now, along with raspberries. These are all just again Mother Nature issues that are just causing supply to not be there for the demand.
Cool. That's all we got this week. This was a ton of fun being in the kitchen. So if there are things, as usual, reach out, the Fell into Food email, or contact Frank or myself directly. I love doing this stuff. I know Frank likes to talk about it while I'm physically doing it, and then you get to see the benefit
Yeah.
of it being done in person. And then we can snip this, and you can see it all. So reach out to us. Let us know what you think. If you like more of this, I'd love to do more of it. So that's all for this week. So until next time, we'll catch you on the
Thank you, everyone.